I left off talking about the importance of making sure that we are always doing above board things when it comes to privacy. I chose that part of standard number 5 because it was very important that we draw the line, and that although we can be friendly with students and with our teachers and with our parents, we still have to have a certain amount of distance. And I know an example about that when I said earlier in my first part of this presentation is I had an example of when that wasn't being done from a person that I actually know who does have Facebook friends that are students. We have to not have that happening. I think as an administrator, we must be fully aware that if that type of thing is going on, that is the new way that we communicate. I know teachers have Facebook pages with each other as well, but I'm not sure that where do we draw the line, even with making sure that teachers are not crossing that line with having students on their Facebook page, and we're not going into their privacy. It's a very murky area, but I do believe that it needs to be something that is done and addressed, and that we don't cross the line with what we're doing. In my personal job, we have a ethical webinar tomorrow, and it's talking about how to do things ethically. It's not necessarily pertaining to teaching, but ethics are ethics. And I think that as an administrator, there should always be an in-house, even when it's a teaching planning day, when maybe one of the planning days out of the year or twice out of the year, there should be a ethics workshop, a privacy workshop, expose the teachers to the latest things that they need to be aware of that's going on when it comes to the internet with children, and what they're being exposed to and what they're bringing to school, and where we stand and how we should address it and view it. And we should always make sure that we stay neutral when it comes to parents and teachers, and support our teachers. But when it starts to be that there may be moral issues, then we must make sure that we know all sides and make sure that we are standing in a position where we don't have to fire someone, or it ends up being a judicial issue where it may go to a court situation. I know that there was actually in my communities class where we had to find things that were banned, and this goes back to the position of an administrator, find things and people that were banned, in the schools. And mine, I chose a video about a young boy who was maybe about 5 years old, and he had a mohawk, and the school took the position that it was a distraction. Now, me just being on the outside looking in, it didn't look like a distraction per se, meaning it wasn't spiked, wasn't standing up on his head, it didn't have different crazy colors in it, and he literally was not bald shaven on either side. It's just that some of his hair was lower cut on the sides than it was on the middle. As a matter of fact, it was very tasteful for a little boy. However, the school threw him out and refused to let him back in because he was supposedly, according to their rules, causing a distraction. And to me, that created a chasm between the parents and the school. Now there is an issue in the community, and the parents feel like the school crossed the line with telling them what and how their child should look as far as that. I know that there is a dress code. However, they felt like aside from a dress code, that was something that should not have even been addressed, and that the child is now not getting the proper education because of the stand that the school took. So we must make sure that we totally, completely stay in an impartial role, whether it's privacy or whether it's ethics or whether it's an issue of what the rules of the school are, and make sure that everybody is aware and are fully engaged in just the welfare of the child. This last standard to me sums up all of the other standards. It is the reason why there are standards in the first place. And in our communities class, this reminds me of the project that we did in our communities class. It's called My Community. We literally had to do a project and find out certain things about the community and the relationship between the community and school and the school community. And I called this Stand in the Place Where You Live. And we had to find, local government and who were the quote unquote movers and shakers, and locally, how was the information being disseminated? Was it mostly online? Were the local television involved? What was in our newspapers? How was the government and civic organizations and the relationships between all of those organizations being portrayed, juxtaposed to the school community? And we recently welcomed a new superintendent, and one of the things that I feel was embodied with what he did, and this is pretty much all of the standards, standard 1 through 5, he chose to, when he first came in, go into each of the schools, and when he went into each of the schools, he basically threw out the administrators so the teachers could feel comfortable with reporting or talking to him at ease about their concerns with their schools and with their principals and with their administrators. And this especially speaks to Standard 5. And he spoke only to them. And this also is what he needed to do. He needed to bridge communication. He needed to be to help to have the teachers feel like their voice mattered, and that was the example I gave about the apathy. He went in to let them know your voice matters. What's going on in your schools is a concern. I am approachable. You can talk to me, because our former superintendent was not approachable at all. No one really felt comfortable with any concerns that they felt, and so Duval County school system lacked a great many progressions because of that, and it suffered by way of the morale for the teachers. So it's very important as administrators that we reach out to civic organizations for participation in the schools, for volunteers, for sharing what they do as a resource for the parents and as a resource for the teachers. The local government, there was an article that we read, and it was how in the article it said that teachers, I think, were the linebackers, and the administrators were the legislators were the quarterbacks. It was one of those things that we had to review and say how we felt about it in a blog. And yeah, it says if the teacher is a quarterback, then the legislators are the offensive line. And it compares the educators and the legislators' positions, and that they're not opposing, they actually work together, meaning that our local government should be defending, they should be protecting, and they shouldn't be in in opposition, direct opposition. Sometimes that has happened here in Duval County with the school board, and the school community, the superintendent. The relationships here have sometimes been very volatile. And in that My Community segment that we did, we had to investigate that. And we had to investigate the demographic makeup of our community. You know, how many demographic makeups we had, how many civic organizations that we had. All these things are factors that an administrator needs to be very cognizant of and aware of, and make sure that no one is being excluded and everyone is getting a fair opportunity to be educated well. So my final thoughts on this is, as far as my takeaway and what I believe as an educator and administrator, is in order to get to your destination, you must first know where you're going. And with that said, I believe in a curriculum model that supports what is called backward design. You start with the end result first and work backwards from there. I think that that's actually my research project for this semester, and I think it's important that we understand it and possibly utilize it and use it as an effective model of learning and teaching and mapping as well. Also, communication is key. Communication is key. I cannot stress that enough between everyone. Communication breakdowns are what causes administrators to have to emphasize and work harder sometimes. Listening is a skill that is invaluable to being an administrator. I believe in listening skills, and not only just listening, but being intentional. Understanding what that person or teacher or student is coming to you with. And just like I stated earlier, being approachable. I believe in being approachable. That it's a teacher, a parent, a student should be able to come up to you and be able to express themselves and know that they are going to be heard and helped. And there is this last point that I'm going to make about how we say things. And there's a small book that has a chapter that says, be impeccable with your words. And when you're an administrator, it is very, very key that what we say, how we say what we say, is just as important as what we say. And standing behind what we say and making sure that we are not creating animosity by the words that we speak to our students, to our community at large, and to our teachers. We need to be able to say what we mean and mean what we say, and be able to foster a trust environment and a conducive environment for learning. So that's my interpretation of the standards for the ISLLC. Thank you for your time.